Hey ACA Executive Vice President Cody Burklam here with you on April the 23rd. We're going to give you our 12th, I believe, installment of our ACA Hats on the Hill wrap up for this week. And just to jump right in it, I tell you, everything is finally coming to a close here in Little Rock at the state capitol. This was, I believe, going to be our last full week of the legislature being in session, which just couldn't come too soon. But we'll talk more about the end and the wrap-up of the legislature here in a minute. But as far as bills that we are concerned about or have been working on here at the very end of the legislative session, the last one that we've got hanging out there is House Bill 1920. I believe you'll probably remember me talking about it last week. That is a bill that's dealing with pulling out all regulations pertaining to beef and dairy production here in Arkansas. And whatever agency or bureaucracy has those, they'll have to pull them out and send in a report to the governor and the legislative council, and then they'll have to also go before the House and Senate agriculture committees to explain those regulations and by what authority they put those regulations out, and give some updates on them. And it also gives them a chance to repeal any regulations they feel are outdated or are no longer needed in that space. So that's a good thing. And so, you know, we have been working on that here the last couple weeks. We certainly want to thank Representative Deanne Vaught, who ran it on the House side, sponsored it on the House side, and Senator Gary Stubblefield, that ran it on the Senate side. And then we also want to say a special thanks to the Attorney General Leslie Rutledge and her office and staff for being the one that really first initiated this piece of legislation to try to make sure that the regulatory environment here in Arkansas is as friendly as it could be to Arkansas beef and dairy producers. And so I want to thank all three of those leaders there for their hard work on HB 1920. It did go through the Senate Agriculture Committee Thursday morning unanimously. It was all the senators on that committee felt like it was a good bill, and they referred it right out to the Senate floor. That will be voted on Monday. Then it will have to go back over to the House to concur on just a small amendment. The House will pick it up Tuesday of next week, concur in that amendment, and pass it on, and it should go on to the governor's desk. So it will be probably one of the very, very last pieces of legislation that is passed during this first part of the session. But we're glad to see that get on through the committee and hopefully onto the governor's desk sometime middle to latter part of next week. Speaking about the end of the session, like I said, we are here at the end of the session. It was announced earlier this week that next Tuesday should be the last regular day of session, and I say regular day because we're kind of moving into some uncharted waters here. In a regular session, what the House and Senate would do is they would pass what they call the Revenue Stabilization Act, or the RSA, and that is the last piece of legislation that is passed during every session, and it simply sets up the budget for the state for the next fiscal year. So this, they've been working on the 2022 budget, which will begin fiscal year 2022 July 1st. And so that's what they've been working on all session, and they finally announced this at the end of this past week that yesterday, I believe, actually, that they had reached an agreement on that. The joint budget committee has passed that out, and so just to give you a little information about that, the RSA for fiscal year 2022 is a $5.84 billion bill for the state government. And the programs and the different spending there. That is a bit of an increase over the 2021 budget, which was $5.68 billion. So there is a little bit of an increase there, but it is a balanced budget because Arkansas does have a balanced budget amendment on the Constitution, so they have to pass a balanced budget. But instead of doing like they would in a normal session and adjourning what they call sine die this year, they're going to just simply recess, and they're going to recess into the fall until they get the census data for all the congressional redistricting and then the state House and Senate redistricting. They will then come back in to handle that issue, and then they will adjourn sine die. And the governor has said that as soon as they adjourn sine die in the fall, he will then call them back into a special session to talk about some tax cuts and things like that that they weren't able to really fully get during the regular session. So technically they're not done. They're just recessing for several months here, kind of in the middle of the year, until they can get everything they need to do to make sure that they can get redistricting done. So we're still gonna be watching them very, very closely. Congressional and House and Senate districts obviously affect our members. It depends on who your representative is, both in the state here in Little Rock and Washington, as to how the views of the cattle producers and beef producers here in Arkansas are represented. So that's always something that we need to watch very closely. It only happens once every 10 years. So we're going to be watching that and following that with piqued interest, and hopefully they'll come back this fall, take care of that, and then maybe look at doing some personal income tax cuts and things like that to drop the tax burden on Arkansans down. But we'll wait to see. They have spent, I believe Thursday was their 102nd day in session, so by the time they recess, they'll probably be at 104 days of actually being in session. Now remember, your Constitution requires that they meet for 60 days, and they met for 104 days. So I believe they are very, very anxious to all get home, get back to their normal lives for at least a little bit until the fall, and we are glad that they are headed home. So with that, we're going to wrap it up this week. We'll not sure. We'll probably go ahead and do one more next week just to kind of wrap everything up and kind of hit the highlights of this past session and things like that. Be looking for that a little earlier in the week, since they're going to be out on Tuesday. We might put that out on Wednesday or something like that, maybe Thursday, just to kind of do a wrap up. But anyway, hope you have a great week. Y'all stay safe out there. We'll talk to you next week.